At the office party, the dim lights and soft music created a casual yet energetic buzz. I walked in with a sense of hope, even though I had been feeling a bit overlooked lately. I had been planning this evening in my mind for weeks, just to enjoy, relax, and maybe finally feel acknowledged. My name is Ethan, 32, and I've always been the quiet, observant type. At work, I was competent, reliable, and people liked me. But somehow, the attention never lingered on me. Tonight, I told myself I would just smile, be present, and maybe, just maybe, she'd notice me. And there she was, Lila, radiant, laughing with her colleagues, her energy lighting up the room. Her charm was effortless, everyone gravitated toward her. I approached, hoping for a warm glance or a small recognition, but when she saw me, she simply nodded, barely hiding a smirk. Then, in front of her colleagues, she said, "Oh, he just came along." The words hit me softly at first, almost like a teasing breeze, but as I processed them, the sting settled deep. I smiled, outwardly calm, but inside, a storm brewed. I wondered if this was a joke, a careless remark, or a subtle dismissal. I tried to laugh it off, chatting lightly with another colleague nearby, but my thoughts kept returning to her words. She didn't even acknowledge my presence properly. She made it clear to everyone that I was just there, a background character in her spotlight. As the night unfolded, the music pulsed with laughter and clinking glasses. Milo, her best friend, kept the conversation flowing, occasionally throwing glances my way with a mixture of curiosity and mild pity. I found myself navigating the social labyrinth carefully, smiling at familiar faces, pretending to enjoy small talk, while my mind replayed her words again and again. Eventually, I found a quiet corner near the snack table. I picked at the appetizers, forcing myself to focus on something tangible. It was in that moment I realized how often I had allowed small slights like this to go unaddressed, how often I had brushed off subtle dismissals at work, at home, or even in friendships. Tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't going to let it slide. I thought back to our last interaction, just days ago. She had laughed at a joke I made, or maybe I had imagined it. I had offered her help on a project, and she had accepted it politely but without warmth. And now, here she was, casually dismissing me in front of the entire office. The contrast was sharp. A small pang of embarrassment mixed with a strange surge of determination. I remembered something my mentor once told me: people will treat you the way you allow them to treat you. That line echoed through my mind, and I realized this was not about the party, not about her colleagues, not about casual remarks. It was about setting a boundary. I straightened my posture, took a deep breath, and decided I would not fade quietly into the background anymore. The evening moved on, and I couldn't help but notice how easily she commanded attention. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the confidence in the way she laughed, how her words carried weight even in casual conversations. I felt a pang of envy, but also clarity. I needed to reclaim my presence, not for her, but for myself. As I stepped aside to grab a drink, I thought about how many moments I had allowed myself to be invisible. I wanted to make a small shift tonight, to assert myself gently but unmistakably. I raised my glass, smiled at the group, and made eye contact with Lila for just a moment. That brief exchange, subtle yet deliberate, carried more weight than words could. If you're enjoying this story and want it to reach more people, please hit the like button. It really helps share the emotions behind this tale. Feeling a renewed sense of composure, I decided to approach Clara, a colleague I had known for a few years, who was talking about a recent project win. We exchanged laughs and shared a brief, meaningful conversation. I realized that building connections didn't always require validation from one person. It could be subtle, genuine, and empowering. Later, I noticed a small group moving toward the dance floor. Everyone was laughing, the music picking up tempo, and I felt a subtle tension in my chest, an anticipation of confrontation, of the moment I might finally speak to Lila directly. But instead of forcing it, I stayed calm, allowing her to notice me as I truly was, not as someone seeking approval. Comment below with your thoughts on how you would handle a situation like this. Share your perspective honestly. Even as she moved past me, talking animatedly with Milo, I found myself smiling inwardly. The smile was not just polite, it was intentional. It was a signal to myself that I mattered, that my presence had value, and that my dignity was intact. A few moments later, the music slowed, and a quieter song began to play. The mood shifted, and Lila glanced in my direction once more. This time, there was no teasing, no dismissive words. She noticed me simply being there. And in that quiet recognition, I understood something important. Validation from others is fleeting, but self-respect is enduring. Type one word in the comments that captures your reaction to Ethan's approach. Let's see what word comes to mind first. The evening wore on, and I moved through the party with a calm focus, no longer seeking approval but simply observing, listening, and interacting on my own terms. I noticed the little things that often go unseen, the way people genuinely laughed at jokes, the subtle gestures of kindness between colleagues, the soft exchanges that didn't need a spotlight. It was grounding, a reminder that life wasn't just about being acknowledged by one person. Lila approached the punch table a few moments later, and I caught her glance. There was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, brief and fleeting, but enough to make me aware of my presence without demanding it. I smiled politely and nodded, letting her interpret it as she wished. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. As I walked past the buffet, I overheard a conversation about the upcoming project deadlines. Theo, a junior team member, was nervously asking questions, and I offered a few tips, casual but confident. His grateful smile reminded me that influence isn't always loud. It can be quiet and effective. And in that moment, I felt the first twinge of something I hadn't felt all evening. Control, not over others, but over my own experience. The music shifted again, a slow number now, and couples began pairing off near the center. I took a moment to breathe, reflecting on how easily one can be pushed into someone else's narrative if they're not conscious. Lila's earlier words replayed in my mind, but this time, instead of sting, they sparked resolve. I wasn't invisible, I had allowed myself to feel that way, but I could reclaim it. If you know someone who has ever felt overlooked, share this story with them. It might inspire confidence and reflection. I decided to make one final round through the room, exchanging brief smiles and nods with people I had known over the years. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about being present, authentic, and calm. I finally found a moment to stand near the balcony, looking out over the city lights, and I allowed myself to reflect honestly on the evening. I realized that much of the discomfort I had felt wasn't just about her words. It was about my reaction, my expectations, and the quiet permission I had given to feel diminished. A shadow fell across the doorway, and I looked up to see Lila approaching, unaccompanied this time. There was no smirk, no teasing tone, just a measured expression that seemed different. "Ethan," she said softly, "I didn't realize you'd been paying attention all evening." I gave her a small, calm smile. I replied simply. No confrontation, no dramatic statements, just a statement of fact. We exchanged a few words about work, and the conversation was polite but genuine. For the first time that night, I noticed a subtle respect in her eyes. Not admiration, respect. Recognition that I existed not as an accessory to her life, but as someone grounded in my own presence. It was empowering, not because she acknowledged me, but because I realized I had earned that sense of stability for myself. Comment below with one word that describes Ethan's emotional journey tonight. Let's discuss how small actions can change perceptions. The music shifted again to a lively, upbeat track, and laughter and conversation filled the room. I stayed rooted in my calm, enjoying the energy without needing to dominate it. Other colleagues noticed my composed presence and began including me in small conversations naturally. It was subtle, yet powerful, a proof that authenticity often speaks louder than forced attention. Finally, as the party began winding down, I noticed Lila leaving with a group. I gave a polite nod, and she returned it, brief but meaningful. The sting of her earlier dismissal had softened completely, replaced by clarity. It was never about her opinion, or anyone else's. It was about my own self-worth and the boundaries I chose to uphold. If you found Ethan's story inspiring, hit like, comment your perspective on handling subtle dismissals, and subscribe for more stories that empower personal growth and self-respect. Walking out of the building into the cool night air, I felt a sense of quiet victory. Not because I had made her notice me in the way I once hoped, but because I had carried myself with dignity, resilience, and awareness. The city lights seemed sharper, the air crisper, and the sound of distant laughter more alive. It wasn't about recognition anymore. It was about claiming my presence, step by step, with calm confidence. As I got into my car and drove home, I reflected on the evening and the subtle lessons it carried. People will always attempt to define your worth for you, sometimes with words, sometimes with actions, sometimes with casual dismissals that feel like nothing. But the real power lies in how you respond, quietly, deliberately, and with a sense of inner value that isn't contingent on anyone else's approval. By the time I reached my apartment, I understood something fundamental. True presence, dignity, and respect begin from within. The party, the remarks, the dismissals, they were all part of a larger lesson in self-awareness, confidence, and emotional resilience. And tonight, I had taken that lesson fully to heart, letting go of expectation and embracing presence. The night was quiet, my mind was calm, and a smile lingered, not because she noticed me, but because I finally noticed myself.